You busy? Mm-mm. Okay, let me run something past you real quick. If you're anything like me, you reflect on conversations that were had. Not just the conversations you and I have, but like things that people say, conversations that have made taken place throughout the day, and you kind of sift through it and you're like, wait a minute. And you're getting new revelation and you're getting emotions about certain things, or you're getting clarity about certain things, or there's some form of revelation that is occurring, and you're like, and it's kind of an aftermath situation. One, you got to be careful if that's the way that your mind is wired, right? Because I feel like that's the perverted version of meditation. Yeah, the Bible says that you're supposed to meditate on his word day and night, not the words of other people. However, I do feel like if with the right time frame, with the proper guardrails in place, that sometimes reflection does yield to revelation. Yeah, you don't want to be stuck in words that somebody said to you when you were however old or at a vulnerable point in your life, because that then starts to echo in your soul, and then you will unknowingly create your own torture chamber, and that's not life, and not life more abundantly. But I did exactly that in the wise way that I'm instructing you to. I simply just did a little dabble on the conversation that I had with someone, and it turned into something else. So the last conversation I was telling you I had, the woman said, "Oh my goodness, you have wisdom and self-awareness of that of a 50 or 60-year-old," because essentially, and I'll just do a little recap, she called me and asked me, "Hey, are you going to such and such's baby shower?" And I said, "Oh no." And she was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out too, because I'm the new person and I don't want to look like I'm not a team player, and I don't want people to think that I'm, not social." And so she was going through all the things that she was trying to prevent, which was ultimately the way that people would have perceived her. And I heard her and I was like, well, it doesn't just seem wise to me for me to travel literally 3 hours round trip just to go to a baby shower. And so she was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense." And I could see that she was under the impression that the validation of what she said, or the excuse of, "Man, that is a long drive," was my reason for not going. So I one-upped her. I said, "No, if I were closer, I wouldn't have gone." And then there was silence. I said, "Yeah, it's just not my thing." So then she was like, because what we do is home based. So she was like, "Well, what happens if they migrate and they tell us that we got to come back to the office?" And I said, "Oh, then at that point, I have to make a decision that is best for me at that time. But yeah, I'm not interested." And she was like, "See, I mean, just listening to you is like, it just feels freeing hearing you say it." And I said, "You may have been under the same impression as me prior to me living in this level of clarity. You don't understand that there's a level of assertion, that someone can actually be assertive and be kind. You think that people who stand up for themselves, probably based on your life experiences and which shaped your worldview on what assertiveness looks like, but you can say no thank you. You can be both kind and clear on what it is that you don't want." And she was blown away. And so having that conversation, I was like, time out. I pulled from that. I said, I wonder why she was blown away at my level of clarity and being able to walk in that level of life, that path, that standard. And I said, well, people are usually blown away by seeing someone execute something that they're fearful of walking in. The person that would just get up and sing in front of people, you're like, wow. Not only did you sing, you sung in front of people. Not only did you sing in front of people, you sung in front of strangers. And what they're ultimately doing is looking at you and looking at them and saying, I'm not brave enough to do that yet. So they're mesmerized by you. Yeah, the person that can go ahead and give a full speech and not feel the jitters, you're like, wow. You're mesmerized, not because they are Shakespearean, not because they are the most intellectual being you've ever heard, but you're looking at their shoes and wondering if you could ever feel it without sweating profusely in it. And I wondered, have I had that lens biblically? Have I ever had that lens that now I can go back and see it differently because I'm operating through a new perspective? And I thought about the two Hebrew midwives that were told by Pharaoh, if the Hebrew women give birth to a baby boy, I need you to throw them in the Nile River. And then the two Hebrew women just so happened to be assigned to Moses' mother. He gives birth to a baby boy. They absolutely positively do nothing that Pharaoh said. Pharaoh finds out. He gets angry. He calls them back into the palace. Why didn't you do the thing that I told you to do? And they were like, oh, the Hebrew women, they just, give birth so fast that we barely was able to even get them to like identify if it was a boy or girl or not. And they made this excuse, and he was upset and he threw them out the palace. But yet the Bible said, and God blessed those midwives. Time out. At one point, that shocked me. At one point, I was like, man, they were brave. And I had to ask myself, why? Well, at one point in my life, I was a people pleaser. At one point in my life, I was a rule follower. And that particular circumstance, if I were in it at that time, called for the two things that I was ruled by. So I may have tried to do a little bit of Pharaoh, a little bit of God. I probably would have tried like, okay, listen, I'm going to take the Hebrew boy, but I'm going to put him somewhere safe and kind of like have the same mindset as Joseph's brother did. Like he was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do a little bit of my brother, a little bit of God. I'm gonna agree to put him in this pit, but I'm gonna have to plan to come back, later on and save him. And so that way I can abide by my people pleasing and abide by the crowd favorite, but still try to secretly kind of sort of also serve God. It doesn't work that way. You on his team or you not? You adhering to what God said, or you adhering to what the people of God that he created said? You gonna follow the creator, or you gonna follow the creation? You gonna follow people who are fickle, or you gonna follow a God that's perfect? It's like literally, what standard of life are you operating on? And honestly, is there any other way? When you look at it like that, like, bro, I heard what Pharaoh said, but I also know that I serve a God that, like, yeah, that's not going to be okay. And like I said in my previous conversation with you, the new standard that I'm living in, if I'm okay, whoever else will be okay. And so, no, let's play it forward. Let's say we go ahead and we people please, and we either throw the baby in the Nile River, or we put the baby somewhere that we can come back and get the baby. And say you come back and get the baby and the baby not there, or the baby dead. Now you got to go back home and confront and soothe your soul because you wanted to be on the path of people pleasing. And now you also have to give an account to your life to God as to why you did the one thing that he stirred up in you not to do. You felt some type of emotion when Pharaoh said it. You felt some type of emotion when you saw this woman laboring over something. You're going to have her labor and birth death. Like, why would you have her do that? And so now you have to go ahead and give an account for your life as to why you did this one thing. And I don't think you saying, God, but Pharaoh told me to do it, is going to pass. Now the real question is, while you're waiting for Judgment Day to give an account of your life, are you okay? Or are you having dreams, reoccurring tortured conversations, things that are not making you feel comfortable because you're reliving that moment because you didn't seize the time and the opportunity to choose what's your standard? Is it Pharaoh or is it God? Which throne are you bowing down to? Is it the palace or is it heaven? Like, which one? What is your standard? And so when you decide what your standard is, it really is no other way. Sir, I'm not throwing these babies into the Nile River. As a matter of fact, I'm not even having an elongated conversation with you about it. I've already decided in my heart that I'm going to go ahead and choose what God said. There's no way that you can people please to the point that you don't please God. There's no way, alternately, that you could think that you'll stand on God's standard and he wouldn't honor that he wouldn't protect that he wouldn't put a hedge of protection over you. There's no way that you can think that. Are you that fearful of man that you won't understand that God's hand is always going to be greater? And so I was like, So the bravery that I once saw at one point, like, oh my gosh, they didn't do what the law was, throwing the babies in the now. It was, because they were willing to break the law to make sure that they were in compliance with the God they serve. Very simple. So I was like, okay, new perspective, entering the chat. Let me think of another one. I thought about David and Goliath. I always read David to be the bravest. I'm like, bruh, you running into buildings people are running out of. You are just oblivious to the fact that the odds are clearly against you. Goliath is 9 feet. Okay, he's been in the army since Ute. Okay, there's a lot of different things that's not working in your favor. You not dressed for the occasion. You came down here in open-toe sandals, sir. There's a lot of things that just looks like, sir, you may not want to put yourself at risk. And while everybody else was factoring in, dang, the Goliath is scary. You got the army of Saul, which included David's brothers, on the side of the mountain, shivering in their armor. You know, you look like a soldier, but you scared like a cat. So, like, have a nice day. You can't tell me anything. And so I see y'all and I see the odds, but David was very much like, but I hear a Philistine talking crazy about my God. And he was like, just like Erica Campbell, I love God. You don't love God? What's wrong with you? he was like, excuse? Yeah, his father sent him down there to do a DoorDash situation. He said, listen, bring these little bit of cheese and crackers and Capri Suns. Bring this to your brothers and then give me a report of how they're doing. And then tell me. And David was like, absolutely, I'm going to comply with that. But also, as I'm down here, who he talking to? No, this uncircumcised Philistine is not talking crazy about my God. Like, yeah, I left my sheep to come see about my brothers, but I definitely hear this Philistine talking crazy about my shepherd. You got to understand how connected to God David was. David was like Psalm 23 in it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And so pause. We ain't even got to go to another standard. How dare you talk crazy about my shepherd and think that I'm not going to see about you? Who he talking to? So now you got Saul like, no, don't do it. You don't got those hands the way that he got those hands. He was like, sir, I'm going. Then you got his brothers like, oh, where's your little bit of sheep? You just came down here to cause problems. He's like, sir, I'm going to give Goliath the hands for free because I felt some kind of way. But then I hear that y'all going to go ahead and give me a wife in the mix of it. And make sure that me and my family got the tax-free setup situation. So listen, it's even the more why I should be going ahead and laying hands with no prayer. Excuse me, while I go see about this Philistine. And one would think, oh my goodness, David, you have a heart that many people don't have. You have the bravery many people don't have. But could it be that David was living by a standard that most people don't? Not a lot of people going to hear you talk crazy about their best friend or their kid or the person in their family and not bare minimum be like, don't do that. Don't say that. Don't say, like, it's innately in us to make sure that we are a representation of who you talking about. We going to rep our set. Isn't that what gang life is about? Isn't that what everything else is about? It's like, I'm not going to have y'all talking crazy about Chick-fil-A if I stand by it. I'm not going to have y'all talking crazy about my grandmother after all she been through. Like, it's just certain things that you like. If I honor it, you going to have to honor it too. Bare minimum, don't talk crazy about it. That's what David did. But you sized up 9 feet and was like, ooh. You sized up the fact that he was in the army and was like, ooh. You sized up the fact that you didn't come down here for this, but wait a minute, maybe you were sent for that. You think God will have you stirred up about something knowing that you getting ready to embarrass him and yourself? Play it forward. You really think that God's going to have it where you like, I'm repping God, and Goliath hit you with the 2-piece combo with the Pepsi on the side, and now you got a biscuit on your forehead, and it'd be like, oh, what happened to David? Oh, he tried to go out there and give Goliath them hands because he was talking crazy about God, but like, yeah, but rest in peace to that homie. Like, you really think that that's going to happen? Do you understand that the Bible says that God blesses you because he honors himself by promoting you? So reverse that. You really think that God's going to have you out here looking crazy while you're living through him, and it looks like, oh, okay, poor you. You really think if you saving yourself from marriage that God's going to have you be the laughing stock? You really think that if you're really doing that business and conducting business in a way that God asks you to do, that he's going to have you out here looking like, she's still holding on to $1 in a dream? Do you really think that if you actually go against culture and go against the grain and live according to God, that you would be the laughing stock? Do you really think that God will have you build an ark with no rain ever inside or known to man, and have you be the one thing everybody's laughing at? Do you really think that God will represent you in that way while you're trying to represent him? That's what it gets down to. That's how you unpeel and unlock the layers. And so when I really started thinking about that, I was like, what I was once calling brave, because I probably would have been a part of Saul's army too, I'm actually seeing like, bro, there's no other way. He talking crazy. Not about your best friend, not about your whomever you put to a high authority, about your God, about the God that makes sure you good, about the God that makes sure that you got breath, that the God that makes sure that you have manna. Who? I'm sorry, Goliath, real quick. Boop, 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 boop. That's my hands. That's me giving him the 2-piece in the combo. Like, you understand? Because no. And then I went to the very last thing. That all this time I've been looking at it like, I don't know if I can ever, because what I used to do, which was healthy, and I'm glad that I did it because now I can see my growth. I used to place me in the scripture and ask myself, if in that environment, if in that predicament, will I have answered in that way? And a lot of the times before this perspective, it was like, no, like I didn't really want to ruffle feathers. I didn't want to cause a scene. I just wanted to, I have a high need for agreement. That's a part of my personality, right? And you can still honor the fact that you are a pleaser. It just can't be people. You can honor the fact that I have a high need for agreement. Yeah, but let it be between you and God. Now you just need to honor yourself and make sure that the standard is God versus the people that he created. I want to read about the 3 Hebrew boys. I literally want to read about what Nebuchadnezzar in that whole situation, what that signifies to me now. And that when I went from staying in this stanza, being an audience member, shocked and awed by this performance, now I can actually place myself on the stage and say I would have did the same exact thing. Let's read Daniel 3. I'm going to start from the tippity top because, I like to start from number 1. I read from the NLT version. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. 2. Then he sent messengers to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officers or officials to come to the dedication of the statue he has set up. 3. So all these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. 4. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command." 5. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. 6. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. 7. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Pause. So at this point, he called out basically the whole side of that earth, told everybody what the new rule, law, and decree is actually going to be and is after he says it. This 90-foot situation is now going to be the indication of your God, because that's whoever you bow to is confirmed to be your God. And so there's no confusion. So nobody can say, "Oh, I didn't get that email. It was check your spam." Like just to make sure that nobody fell asleep at that part of the meeting. He wanted everybody to be there to not only see the statue, but to hear the standard, to make sure that they were clear on how they should be living thereafter. Resume. 8. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. 9. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king." 10. You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments. 11. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. 12. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Pause. So at this point, what is their crime? That they refuse to serve the gods of Nebuchadnezzar, and they refuse to bow down to yet a physical alternate god, the gold statue he set up. That is their crime. That's what they're being charged with. Resume. 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, 14, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up?" 15. I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then, what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Pause. You asked them a question, sir. You didn't even give them a chance before you gave them what the solution and another chance was going to be. But I find it to be interesting that here you are getting upset about one thing, two things, but you only really highlighted one thing. Let's go back. 14 says, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that 1, you refuse to serve my gods, 2, or to worship the gold statue I have set up?" 15. I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Pause. Sir, so you're not really upset for real that I'm not worshiping your God. You just mad that I'm not listening and worshiping you. Yeah, you said you charged them with 2 things. Is it true that you take extra long on your lunch? And is it also true that you didn't do the project that I gave you? I'm going to give you one more chance. That project is due by tomorrow. Wait a minute. You didn't even mention the lunch issue no more. You charging me with 2 things, but you only really highlighting the one thing because it's only one thing that makes you feel good, that makes your particular ego feel better. Like there's only one thing that's feeding you. And so you're charging me ultimately with the thing that feeds you the most. Isn't that interesting, supervisor? Isn't that interesting, parents? Oh, because you out there with that boy, but at the same time, you didn't go ahead and pay this bill. You got one more time to go ahead and pay this bill. It's like, wait a minute. So the thing that actually makes you or feeds you or makes you feel some kind of way, that's the thing that you really want to harp on. It has nothing to do with the first thing you charged with. It has everything to do with the fact that you are almost, dare I say, shocked that I'm not bowing to you. Just like Nebuchadnezzar. Could it be that that's what the suffering is in your particular relationship? Could it be that that's the thing that you're suffering in that particular workplace? Could it be that's the thing that's happening in the family? Could it be that that's actually the source of contention, is that they're trying to make themselves your God and you're like, I'm not bowing to that? Let's see how this is handled. So he thought, I'm going to give you one more chance. He thought gritting his teeth was going to do something. He thought, and then you added injury to insult. It's one thing if you just said what you said and kept it moving, but you went ahead and thought that if you gave me a reprimand and then took away what could be my covering, that I was going to balk at the knees. That last statement says, and I quote, but if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Pause. See, the thing, Nebuchadnezzar, really high key, is that that's a question that you're trying to figure out, but that I'm already sold on. See, yeah, I'm sold on if I stand by God's standards, he has to cover me. Because that's what his word says. He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will not leave you like an orphan child. That listen, all who are heavy burdened, come to me. Listen, cast your cares. I done seen what God said. I done seen what God did. And the question that you're asking is truly a question for you, but I've already solved that within me. So you asking who's going to rescue me? God. You asking, oh, and if I throw you in the furnace, what's going to happen to you? Either I'm going to be with God or God going to be with me, but I'm going to be in heaven with God. You understand? Like either way, it's G-O-D from the T-O-E, sir. From the crown of my head to the sole of my feet. You can have a nice day, but let's see how he responds. 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar. Pause. They had to tilt their head. They was like, oh, that baby think he doing something. It's cute. Let him continue to wear his little robe and his little bit of palace or whatever. But okay, let's resume. Oh, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. 17. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, pause, because you like to project and say what's going to happen. So let us go ahead and fast forward the tape with you, shall we? Let's play the game. 17. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. 18. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. Pause. I'm talking about let's drop the everything for them grandbabies. Clear. He said, just to make sure that you know that I heard you, I'm going to allow everything that you said to re-enter the chat, this so that you don't think that I'm operating in delusion or confusion. What's the highlight of this for me now? Because before I was like, oh, I can't, because before I probably would have been like, okay. And then secretly at night, she went ahead and packed a bag and then went north. And then, because I would have tried to go somewhere else because y'all are crazy at this company. Y'all acting ridiculous in the subdivision. Y'all drinking some kind of water that I don't drink from. And I would have tried to make peace from then, but went ahead and picked up my pace at night. You understand? Because I can't. And they were like, no, I'm not. Now, this is what highlights to me. I'm going to read it again and show you where to really put it a different perspective in my whole equation. 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, pause, they all in agreement. It wasn't just one speaking for them. It wasn't like, hold on, wait. It's not like one saying something and the other two are like, Now, Nebuchadnezzar, low key, he talking, but like, I'll bow. I ain't gonna hold you. I will listen. I'm talking about down on bending knee. Like, what you want me to do, sir? Yeah, because, no, they were all in agreement. 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. Pause. That's the trap for most. You feel like when somebody asks you why you didn't do something and how come it's not done and when do you need, and no. When you are doing what God called you to do, you let God defend you. You remember that time when Jesus was being tried by Pilate and he was like, dude, are you the king of Jews? And he was like, ribbit, not saying nothing. Then when he was asked again, are you the king of Jews? Because they was losing all kind of deodorant and momentum. Are you the king of Jews? Like, tell us, because we want to go ahead and trap you. He was like, you have said it. There's a composure that one takes on when it is understood who is covering you. I don't need to defend myself towards you, ma'am, sir. I'm not even going to try to go into my bag of verbiage and pull out something that would be appeasing or validating to you. I'm not doing it. So I'm going to fast forward what I could say, what I shouldn't say, and I'm just going to say, I'm not defending myself against you. Okay, great. Also, I want to pick up what you dropped off because you accused us for two things. So I want to go ahead and address both. 17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. Pause. That's the issue right there. Most people are operating in a way that man has the final say. Oh, but what if you get fired? Oh, be that in the name of Jesus. Oh, but what if the HOA says? And what if the people in the subdivision? But what if your mom gets mad? And what if your family then? And it's like you ultimately have said and subscribed to yourself and thought, man, they have the final say and I'm fearful of the power that they have. Your mother's power, your best friend's mood, your spouse's whatever, that is enough to make you get outside of the standard of God. The reason why there was nothing else to talk about, the reason why there was no other way is because they were convinced. Read it again. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. So that's it. I'm not doing it because God said don't bow to no other gods before him. And if something happens, cool, he's able to save us. And I'm convinced of that. I'm not convinced that if you fire me, now my whole family is not going to be able to eat. Rebuke that. I'm not convinced that if I make a decision that is in line with me taking care of my temple or taking care of my first ministry, which is my family, or taking care of the things that God assigned to me, or not doing things that look like throw babies into the Nile River. If I stand on a standard that looks like God, then I am convinced that he will save me because I stood on his standard. But yet so many people buckle at the knee because you are living by other people's standard and the power that you think that they have. No, it's the power that you gave them. Continue reading. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. Pause. So they did not decline or was deluged by Nebuchadnezzar got power. Understood, but my God has the final say. Understood that you can go ahead and kick me out. Understood that you can go ahead and put me in a predicament. But that doesn't decrease my God's power. You put me in a predicament don't make me realize that now the power has shifted. The pendulum has not swung. My God is still on the throne. Do you understand that? Two things could be true, but one thing can be solid for you. No, Nebuchadnezzar got power, but God can save us from that power. No, Nebuchadnezzar definitely is in the palace, but the throne over my life, yeah, is God. Yeah, two things can be clear. One thing can only be my absolute. Do you understand? Let's continue. 18. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods, which was the first thing that you charged us with, or worship the gold statue that you have set up, which was the second thing that you set up. And that's the thing. Let's go ahead and play it forward. Because a lot of people are falling victim to certain situations because God didn't come through the way that you thought. But didn't it say in Isaiah that his ways are above our ways, that the way that he thinks surpasses the way that we could ever, that is higher, that we will never understand. Our minds cannot compute what God has done. How is your mind going to compute the one who made your mind? So you could go ahead and just do what Proverbs says. Don't lean on your own understanding. Just trust everything that God is doing and just leave it alone. And so a lot of people are bending because you're like, I'm going to go ahead and walk off the job and do what God said. And then you start buckling at the knee because you like, oh, I thought he would have came through by now, but the bill is starting to, and my account is starting to, and my friends are starting to, and now you starting to buckle at the knee because what you thought was going to be the end all, or how you thought the grace was going to come through and save you, it didn't. So now you getting kind of buckled knee, you getting kind of spaghetti noodles in the limbs, and you like, God, like you were supposed to come through right now. And I love the fact that the Hebrew voice was like, I'm gonna play it forward, even if he doesn't come through the way that I thought, even if he doesn't come through at the time frame that I was assuming, we still not. So I'm going to tell you now, he's probably going to go ahead and save us because that's just the God that we serve. But then I'm gonna go ahead and play it forward just so that y'all know, and even if he don't, we still not. So I'm pretty much telling you there is no other way. It's God's standard all the way through, sir. 19. Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded the furnace to be heated 7 times harder than usual. Pause. Then we know that the people that were directed to go ahead and throw them into the 7 times harder furnace, that they actually died. See, your anger, Nebuchadnezzar, is so out of control that you don't realize you're killing other people by trying to harm me. Yeah, you don't realize that you're going through great lengths to stalk my social media, to see what I'm doing, to see how I'm doing it, that you don't realize that you are straining and hurting other people. Other people are being harmed by your fascination with me and my God. No, I'm not even going to highlight the fact that it's a fascination with me. It's a fascination between me and my God. How do I know? Because of what you said. What you said was, and I quote, "But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" Pause. Oh, that's a question that you are trying to figure out in your heart. I already have it clear. My God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if I cancel you, or if I go ahead and fire you from this company, and we go ahead and if we do, then where are you going to work again? Then where's your clients going to come from? Then how are people going to view you? And sir, that sounds like a question that you're authentically asking yourself. I don't have that question in my heart. If I don't work for this company, my anointing will be at another company. If you decide to go ahead and talk bad about me, then God will go ahead and assign a whole nother group of clientele for me. I don't want you to ever to be deceived to believe that if you in something, that God can't start something else. I don't ever want you to be tickled by like, yeah, we really finished him or her that time. Like, really? Because God is a God that he writes chapters that are bestsellers. And so when you think Potiphar's wife that, yeah, we finally got Joseph now, that'll teach him for not sleeping with me, it's going to seem real uncomfortable when the same person that you threw into the prison for telling a fib that he tried to sleep with you when in fact you couldn't control yourself, it's going to be real uncomfortable when that person is now second in command in the place that you live. You don't get the final say. Now that I live through this perspective, I now see bravery different. Because the real question is there really any other way outside of living the way that God said? Is there any other way outside of living in the vein of God's standard? Now we know how it turns out for the Hebrew boys. Jesus is in the mix. Nebuchadnezzar was all kind of like, yikes, and my goodness, and wasn't there 3, and then guess what happened? Let's read verse 29. Nebuchadnezzar's words. Therefore, I make this decree. Matter of fact, let's go one up. 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. 29. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this. 30. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Pause. Seems to me, Nebuchadnezzar, you got your question answered. Because earlier on, when you were like, and I quote, actually verse 15, and then will God will be able to rescue you from my power. I would like to go ahead and say that that was actually an authentic question you were asking in your own soul. Because now you're able to go ahead and confirm that for yourself. But we already knew that. See, we're living out possibly a testimony that other people are afraid of or have questions about. Maybe it was truly a authentic question of what God rescues, what God helps his people, because the Bible says God's, plural, meaning that he, Nebuchadnezzar, was serving so many gods. He was in search of who can actually save. He was in search of who's the true living God. He was in search of it. And so because he couldn't find it, he built another statue and something else to serve and something else to bow down to and something else to worship, because the gods that he was serving, it wasn't happening. And now when he's asking the question, oh, what God will be able to rescue you? Now at the end of it, he's able to answer it. Read it again. Daniel 3:29. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this. So now he got the answer. So may I go ahead and provide you with the challenge and the new decree. There is no other way. You have to live by God's standard. You never know what God is trying to do through you. You have to live by God's standard. You can't be lost and bowing down to several different things like the people who are lost are putting in charge or putting into law or putting into practice. These people are lost. You're not. You stand and you live in his standard. There is no other way. Do you understand that? All right, listen, I feel like you got what you needed. You know what these conversations are, though, right? They are life-provoking conversations that not the average person's going to have with you, but who? Your favorite homegirl. Listen, if any of this did something to your heart, I open up the opportunity to sow a seed into the ministry. Patreon.com/strive, the letter N as in Nancy, inspire. Strive and inspire. Because I truly believe that as I'm walking things out, God is having me go ahead and speak things into people's lives. And when he's speaking something into your life and you can see the fruit of that, you now have the capacity to sow into that. And that's exactly what the Patreon is. That's what these conversations are for. But have you also been seeing your girl on the YouTubes? Created the number 2 multiply is the handle. And then if you wanted to go ahead and look at some merch and some other little snatchy things, you can go on created the number 2 multiply.com for all the things that are the things. But listen, I don't want to stand in the way of ministry or you doing what you felt led by God to do. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch a little bit to the left. And I'm going to go ahead and let you let me go. We talk later? All right. Later.